You mentioned the drop in the poverty rate. Specifically, we noticed at Just the News that the poverty rate for African Americans hit historic lows, that the household wealth increased historically for African Americans. What was driving that increase in wealth for African Americans? And now in 2020, with the coronavirus, with unemployment spiking, what would be your plan for the second term to improve lives for African Americans?
I'll go first because of your question. I appreciate your question. And yeah, we've had a tremendous drop in poverty for all people in our nation, but in particular for African Americans. And that statistic came in, and it's because the African American community, the black community, has had the best employment numbers that we've ever had, both employment and unemployment, depending on how you want to define it. But we've had the best employment numbers we've ever had. Now, we had the greatest employment in the country ever, almost 160 million people. We've never been close to that number, but we were just 6 months ago. And I'm very proud of the numbers. African Americans, Hispanic Americans, they had the best numbers they've ever had by far, both employment and unemployment, depending on definition. The census recently found that in the second quarter of 2020, Hispanic Americans' home ownership reached a record all-time high. That's all-time in the history of our country. Yesterday, the census reported that median income for Americans increased by an unprecedented $4,400 last year to a record of $68,700. In 2019, income inequality fell for the second straight year. The income gap widened under the Obama-Biden administration, and it widened fairly substantially, and it narrowed under the Trump administration. So there's a little fact that you didn't know. So it narrowed under us, and it widened under Obama. Income grew more last year alone than over the entire 8 years of Obama-Biden. And that's a big statement, but that's the way it is. In 2019, 4.2 million Americans were lifted out of poverty. That's the largest poverty reduction under any president in history. 4.2 million Americans were lifted out of poverty. The Hispanic American poverty rate reached the lowest level ever, history of our country. Hispanic American poverty rate, lowest level ever. I created the greatest and fairest economy in history. The biggest gains went to lower income Americans. As they measure that kind of thing, we will be back to full strength very soon. We're going to have a fantastic year next year. It's looking like that. I think you're going to have an incredible third quarter. The numbers are looking very, very strong for the third quarter. We have numbers that we're going to put out tomorrow, some of the individual things. Car production, housing ownership. So many different things are just at levels that nobody thought possible as we round the turn on the pandemic.